Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. We're live, we're national. It is Friday night, so we get to let our hair down, even me. And the phone number, of course, 833-4825-337-8334-Valdez. I'm going to be getting to your calls in a little bit. Open phones across America, the last couple of segments of every hour of this program. Happy to chat with you. And the news. So, Donaldus Magnus, convicted felon El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of the United States. Well, he's been found guilty, and the sentence that was imposed, lawfully discharged. How about that? Right? Isn't that something? This was the situation in court today. Judge Merchant, what did Judge Merchant say? He had a lot to say, but I'll give you a little bit of cut number 4 here. Judge Merchant says that he's never been in this unique predicament. You know why? Because you never went after somebody the way you went after Trump, moron. Anyway, listen to the judge.
Never before has this court been presented with such a unique and remarkable set of circumstances. Indeed, it can be viewed fairly that this has been a truly extraordinary case. There was unprecedented media attention, public interest, and heightened security involving various agencies. And yet, the trial was a bit of a paradox because once the courtroom doors were closed, the trial itself was no more special, unique, or extraordinary than the other 32 criminal trials that took place in this courthouse at the same exact time.
Blah, 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 blah. He went on pontificating, 6-7 minutes to end up that the only possible way, let me see, I got the transcript right here. I just don't want to play all of this for you because it's just too much. You'll fall asleep. It's nighttime. It's 9 o'clock. You have it? Oh, yeah. Got it. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. Folks, Count Delacula is on top of things. He is in my ear. After careful analysis and obedience to the governing mandates. All right, let's listen to this. I think we got it.
After careful analysis and obedience to governing mandates and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
Look at that. Judge Merchant, again, to use his words, I got the transcript right in front of me, and he said so much. I just wanted to bring you the juicy part, and this is it right here. Highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree, which he was found guilty of 34 times. And he was unlawfully discharged on all of those. What that means, I don't know, but we're going to find out. I'm going to get somebody from Alvin Bragg's office, the New York City prosecutor's office. I'm going to get someone from that office to join us, or a former member of that office to join us in just a few minutes, because I want to get to the bottom of this. But that's what's going on there. Then I want to shift gears real quick to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is at it again. He's on a video call with the White House, and he's telling Joe Biden, listen, Yeah, my state's burning to smithereens. But you know what? The biggest problem we have is what politicians are saying in the media. And this guy's panties are in such a twist right now. Listen to this.
I ask you, we've got to deal with this misinformation. There were hurricane force winds of mis and disinformation lies.
Hang on a
People wanted
second.
to buy it.
Hurricane force winds of misinformation. This guy is such a, I don't know if I could say horse's ass on the radio, but he really is one of those. What a pendejo. Hurricane force winds. How about the hurricane force winds that are pushing the fire from one building to the next, and the crazy Californians that are setting fires in addition to the fire that's going on? This guy's got so many problems on his hands. Yeah, the locals will take care of it. Blah, blah. Meanwhile, the locals are pointing to the left, pointing to the right. Nah, I got no water. Oh, it's the water lady's fault. Oh, it's the mayor's fault. Oh, it's the governor's fault. Well, they didn't have electricity. It's not because of the water. Everybody's got a story. This is an absolute disaster. Go ahead.
And we're going to have to address that as well. And it breaks my heart as people are suffering and struggling that we're up against those hurricane forces as well. And that's just a point of personal privilege that I share that with you because it infects real people that are out there, people I meet every single day, people the mayor's been meeting with, and they're having conversations that are not the typical conversations you'd have at this time. And you wonder where this stuff comes from. And it's very damaging as well. But we're here to get the job done.
They're there to get the job done. Well, listen, I think this guy's a clown. And I'm glad that Trump called on him today and said these people should be, him in particular, he said this man should resign. Super happy to hear that because he should be. Because, come on, this guy's an absolute clown, right? And I got a clip of Ron DeSantis kind of responding to this and how the media is treating it, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But right now, I want to talk about these fire chiefs, right? Because there's apparently a lot of chiefs. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians, right? Seems like a fair thing to say. But look at this. This is just something I saw on social media briefly. I started reading it, and I said, oh, my gosh, I got to get into this. I wish I had a little clip for you, but I'll set the stage for you. There's 3 people in charge of Los Angeles fire response. I'm reading this verbatim. All 3 of them are lesbians named Kristen. That's not exactly right. A couple of them are named Christina. Christina Crowley, first LGBTQ fire chief of the LAFD. Her salary, by the way, $439,722. I think that might be a little bit more than Joe Biden makes. Then we have, same spelling, Christina with a K, Christina Kepner, first lesbian assistant chief of LAFD. Her salary, $264,468. Not bad. Then we have Christine with a K Larson, first black lesbian equity bureau chief of the LAFD. And I saw a video with her in it, and she said, people come at me and say things like, you know, if my husband gets caught in a fire, I want to make sure that, you know, you're able to carry him out of a burning building. And you know what she said on tape? I think it was a recruitment video. She said, I'll get the audio to this because I saw it somewhere and I can get it. Oh, you do? Listen to this insanity.
Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
He got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire? Yeah, that's exactly why we call the fire department. I don't call the fire department because things are going well. I call the fire department because my house is ablaze. These people are so out of touch. They're out of control. Now, of course, someone on the left is going to criticize me and anybody else who's talking about this, saying, oh, so you're beating them up for being lesbians? No, I don't care that they're lesbians. Why did I mention it? Because it's in the article I'm reading. But the bottom line here, I care that they don't care. That's the issue. Unbelievable. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Anyway, we're going to continue this conversation. I want to take a pause right here. We're going to come back and finish close the loop, I should say, on what's going on with El Trompito Donaldus Magnus and what an unconditional discharge means. It sounds to me like it's dismissed, but it's not, right? Apparently he's still a convicted felon and he could still appeal that. I don't know how this goes, but we're going to find out with somebody who used to work in the Manhattan prosecutor's office straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation. Of course, El Trompito not very happy about this, saying it's a disgrace what has happened in New York City with this verdict, even though, it wasn't a really big deal. A lot of memes are going around social media saying Trump was sentenced to another 4 years in the White House. Kudos. But the reality is there was still, in my opinion, a miscarriage of justice here because of the way that lawfare was allowed to continue, even if you try to sweep it under the rug. And again, that's how I'm seeing it. Perhaps I'm seeing it the wrong way. That's why I want to bring in an expert here. He's a former assistant district attorney in Manhattan, the same office that Alvin Bragg runs today. He's a constitutional and civil rights lawyer as well. Amir Benno is with us. Amir, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here, Rich. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's
my
my
dog's
pleasure.
excited to hear you as well. You hear it barking. I'm sorry.
We got a new fan in the doggy. Yeah. Well, check this out, Amir. I want you to listen to a clip of Trump's attorney. I want you to hear his opinion of what happened in court, and then I want to get your take, having been a prosecutor. Check this out.
It's a sad day for President Trump and his family and friends, but it's also, in counsel's view, a sad day for this country because this was a case, without a doubt, that was brought by a district attorney who promised that he would go after President Trump if elected and felt like he had to go through with that promise. And so that's sad. And I hope, and I know that President Trump shares this view, that this will never happen again in this country. And so we certainly understand where we are today. We very much intend on pursuing an appeal of this verdict and what happened during this investigation. And we certainly believe that the only appropriate sentence, if one's to be imposed at all, which we very much believe it shouldn't be, and that the case should be dismissed, is a sentence of an unconditional discharge.
That is Todd Blanche, President Trump's attorney. Now, Amir Benno, former assistant district attorney in the Manhattan prosecutor's office. What is your thought? Do you agree with Mr. Blanche? What are your thoughts of the decision? What do you think of the judge? Do you think the Supreme Court should have taken this yesterday? And did this go too far? What say you?
Well, I think Todd Blanche is correct on this. I mean, the case should have been dismissed, and I do think the Supreme Court should have taken it. First of all, let's start with where we're at. So Donald Trump is sentenced. This was supposed to be the crime of the century, the crime of our lifetimes. Somebody who stole, according to Alvin Bragg, and I was at that office, but not under Alvin Bragg. I was there under Robert Morgenthau years ago. Much different office than Bragg. And by the way, that office, even under Bragg, Bragg didn't want to go forward with this case at first. And his predecessor, Cy Vance, didn't want to go forward with this case. And the Southern District federal prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District, which has jurisdiction over Manhattan, didn't want to go forward with this case. Nobody who's looked at this case fairly and honestly has thought that there was a case, because there is no case. And so that's the reason why it shouldn't have gone forward. And, look, he's sentenced now, which at this crime of the century, and Alvin Bragg saying that essentially the theory of the case was that Donald Trump defrauded the American public and to steal the highest office essentially in the world. And
he did all that with $130,000, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and we can laugh about it if it wasn't so actually serious. Because if somebody wants to go after you, this is Lavrenti Beria. This is Stalin's head of what was, the predecessor to the KGB, saying, "You show me the man, I will find you the crime." They had a bee in their bonnet about Donald Trump, and they were going to get him, and so they concocted something out of whole cloth. And what did? They found a misdemeanor. He records in his ledger that this non-disclosure agreement payment, which is completely legal, And people have any number of reasons for why they would do that, economic reasons for not wanting to have to incur, the litigation costs, et cetera. So they agree to settle a case, and in exchange for which, the parties give a full release and a confidentiality agreement. His lawyer, Michael Cohen at the time, is the one who makes the payment. So he logs it, or actually somebody, one of his subordinates, a secretary, logs this in his ledger as a payment to a lawyer, which is what it was. But Alvin Bragg decides that that's deceptive in some way and says, well, I want to prosecute you. The problem is it's a misdemeanor at best, if it's even a crime. And the misdemeanor statute is only a couple of years, and it's long past. And so, well, what can Alvin Bragg do? Well, you got to make it into a felony in order to get a longer statute of limitations and be able to prosecute it. Well, it just so happens in New York, in order to make it a felony, you have to have committed that misdemeanor to conceal another crime. And so Alvin Bragg comes up with this novel idea. This is, again, the one that's been rejected by all these other DA's offices and U.S. attorney's offices. Well, we're going to use a federal crime as the predicate, the underlying crime. And never been done before. A lot of people think that it's not, you can't do it, but he does it anyway. And
the crime that the feds passed on, just to be clear.
Yeah, exactly right. The crime, the defense, and it doesn't even make any sense, because one of them was, it was a federal election crime where it's you didn't record, or you essentially deceptively wrote on your disclosures when you campaigned that this was not that this was a campaign expense when you tried to conceal it. It was something else. But nobody could take a non-disclosure agreement for a perfectly private thing, which is what this was, and put that onto a federal election, campaign disclosure. Had you done it, they would have said that he was improperly using campaign funds for private purposes. So essentially, they had him checkmated. It didn't matter what he did. If he had written it or if he hadn't written it, they were going to find a way to prosecute him. And then when they had that crime, they introduced into evidence all sorts of testimony and evidence, tweets that he did when he was president, testimony from his aides, things of that nature that were from his office of the president, which the Supreme Court has said is not only immune itself from being the basis of a criminal prosecution, but can't even come into evidence to support a prosecution for any other kind of offense. So it's completely inadmissible, but yet the judge allowed it in. And then when Donald Trump wanted to speak about this, placed Donald Trump on with a gag order, multiple gag orders. But what he didn't gag is he didn't gag Michael Cohen, he didn't gag Stormy Daniels, he didn't gag Alvin Bragg from getting out there and saying their side to the public about what this case was. So you essentially had Donald Trump on risk of being held in contempt and being jailed, not being able to counterpunch what the other side was saying. And then you've got, of course, the judge who's
right. And I just want to say real quick, Amir, because I think that's wrong on a couple of levels, right? It's wrong because he can't effectively run for president, and it's wrong because he can't effectively defend himself. I want to pause right there, if you don't mind. We're going to come right back, folks, with Amir Benno. That's Amir with 2 E's and 2 N's in Benno, former assistant district attorney in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, constitutional and civil rights lawyer. Great guy. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. Our guest, Amir Benno, me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After careful analysis and obedience to governing mandates and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
That, of course, the sentence from Judge Juan Merchan, and a lot of people are upset about it, not the least of which is our guest, Amir Benno. Amir Benno was a prosecutor, an assistant district attorney in the Manhattan prosecutor's office. He's since gone on to do amazing things as a trial lawyer, focusing on civil rights and constitutional law. Amir Benno, I had to pause you before because of a break, but you were telling us about how Trump was gagged, wasn't able to defend himself, and now he's stuck with this unconditional discharge. And if you can, explain to us what that means as well.
Right. Well, the unconditional discharge, you never see it. You never see it in any criminal case. It's a sentence that essentially says that there's no limitations on you. Usually there's a conditional discharge on very low-level offenses. And the conditions being you got to stay out of trouble, you can't consort with other criminals, that sort of thing. Maybe you have to go do some community service. Nothing here. Unconditional means no conditions. And so for all this and all this taxpayer money and all this time and that was spent when there's real crime, there's tragic things happening in the subways in Manhattan where people being lit ablaze by all sorts of malevolent people there, and they're going after somebody for a bookkeeping ledger entry that isn't even false. And the other thing I was going to mention, Rich, which is. Yeah. You see Jamie Raskin talking about recently, Sam Alito needs to recuse himself from all sorts of different things because there's an appearance of impropriety. Well, where was Jamie Raskin when we had Judge Merchan, whose daughter is, Judge Merchan himself is donating to Donald Trump's opponents, but his daughter is working for Kamala Harris and also. An agency that does work for them and advocates for them. But where was their argument that he should have recused himself because of the appearance of impropriety, which actually existed in that case? So he should have recused himself, but he didn't. This is the same thing which happened in Georgia, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And but at least she got in a little bit of trouble. They asked her some questions. She was embarrassed. This guy doesn't seem to be embarrassed at all. And the folks in the New York State Bar, they go after Rudy Giuliani, of all people, America's mayor. But this guy seems to get a pass. How does that work, and how do you fix that?
Well, let me explain why it works that way, because it touches on what you talked about earlier. This is not something I think that the American public, even the Democrats, writ large in America want or support this conviction of Donald Trump, this prosecution. This is something that the far left, population who live in Manhattan, New York County, where this judge sits, where Alvin Bragg, that's his entire jurisdiction, is just this island of Manhattan, and one of 62 counties in New York. They are pandering to their constituents because, Judge Merchan is an elected official as well. And so he's got to run. Alvin Bragg's got to run. And so it doesn't much matter, people may hate this in California. Maybe they don't. They may hate it, in the Midwest. But in Manhattan, they eat this stuff up, and that's why these guys are doing it. And it's terrible because, they say, if you ever look at the images of Lady Justice wearing a blindfold, the idea is you're not supposed to look at people's faces. You're not supposed to identify them and say, I'm going to give somebody a harsher punishment or less punishment because of who they are or what they look like or what their stature is. But that's exactly what they did here. They went after somebody because of their political ideology and their political position that they held and the positions that they took. Having nothing to do with the criminal law whatsoever. They concocted an offense in order to sideline somebody and to manipulate the election process. And here's the problem that Donald Trump may face now. Yeah, it's a slap on the wrist. It's less than a slap on the wrist. So now he can officially, if it was anybody else, appeal. But Article 2 of the Constitution says that there's one president. There's one. The executive branch is one person. It's the president.
Right.
And all the other powers are delegated to his subordinates or her subordinates. But you cannot prosecute the president because doing so you're prosecuting the presidency, and that goes for states and federal. That's why Jack Smith had to drop his cases. And so there can't be any criminal prosecution at any stage of a criminal prosecution against the president, and that includes an appeal. And so Donald Trump can, and he should, and he would win if they will hear his appeal because of all the issues that I outlined.
He's got 9 days? He could do
He's
it
got a limited
9 or
amount
10
of time
days?
to file. Then yeah, right. Well, they're not going to hear this appeal before he gets inaugurated. And so what's going to happen is he's going to get inaugurated. He's going to take the Oval Office, and I guarantee you, Alvin Bragg's office, which is going to be on the other side of this appeal, and the judges who sit in the appellate courts in New York, who are for the most part all Democrats, are going to say, sorry, we can't hear this. We're divested of jurisdiction because the Constitution forbids us from taking any step in a criminal prosecution, including an appeal, in against the president. And so they're going to hold this conviction over Donald Trump for the 4 years that he's in office. And that is precisely what Judge Merchan wanted to do. Because even if they win on appeal, what would happen is they would just eliminate the conviction, but it would go back down to where Donald Trump was before he went to trial. He would be back to square one. It wouldn't necessarily dismiss the case. And they can't prosecute Donald Trump because he's a president. So the thing that Merchan should have done is dismiss the case. And had the Supreme Court taken this, and they needed one more vote. And so Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts sided with the liberal wing of the court and said no. Had they taken it, I think this is what they would have said. They would have said, we're going to hold a stay of this sentencing. And this case should have been dismissed. And so I think that's what's going to happen, unfortunately.
Now, Amir, let me ask you. Yesterday, I look at this through my eyes, right? I'm a guy that I watch the news. I talk about politics. I served in state government for a little while. I understand a few things, but I'm not you, right? I was not an assistant district attorney in New York City, and I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I look at this, and to me, it seems like that should have been the choice made yesterday. Coney Barrett, Justice Coney Barrett, and Chief Justice Roberts, they made the decision that, well, he can go on ahead and appeal. You just explained to me, quite eloquently, that it's a catch-22, right? He can't. So, did they not know this? Did they skip that class at your law school?
You know what? I think this is what they call sui generis. This is like a first thing. There's never really. First of all, when it comes to Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, I think that their conservative bona fides are to be questioned in many respects. And so I don't know whether it's a deliberate choice or whether they had some other reason and they just wanted this to be. They thought this should be dealt with on the merits whenever that merits briefing should happen, 4 years from now maybe. But this. The fact of the matter is, this has never happened before, and so they're making.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we could say it never happened before, or we could say, no, I stand by my decision, Coney Barrett and Roberts, and yeah, when he's done, he can go and appeal, right, at the end of his 4 years. But that does hamstring him being this criminally convicted president, or does it not? Is it just a stain that would be annoying?
I mean, look, I don't think it hamstrings him, having this. It is a stain, and it's a blight. Nobody wants that. I don't blame him for not wanting to have a felony conviction. Right. But so nobody would want it. And so, but will it have any sort of consequential effect on his abilities to be the president or to, live his life? No, it's not going to affect him. I mean, certainly there are certain things that a felony conviction might impact your ability to do. I don't know the laws in Florida and whether they'll allow him to vote or whether he can get himself a certificate of relief from civil disabilities is what they call it. But whether you can possess a firearm, I mean, it's crazy. It's like looking through the looking glass here. Like the president of the United States, the commander in chief of the armed forces, cannot, because has a felony conviction, serve in the armed forces. I mean, unless he's given some sort of a waiver. I mean, it's so upside down and backwards. But ultimately, there's really not going to be an effect on his life, and that's what this whole thing is just so silly. It's like all of this effort that they went into to pursue this criminal prosecution against this man on a make-believe crime. For what? Yeah. It was all for naught. It was all for naught.
Now, Amir,
and it should have been. I mean, it should never have been brought in the first place.
I agree with that 100%. If I had to guess, if you were donning a black robe and you were a justice of the United States Supreme Court, I'm guessing that you likely would have sided with Alito and Clarence Thomas. However, I don't want to indict Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts the way I indict Judge Merchan, because to me, I think that, I read the opinion, and there was, they're making this case. Now, like you're saying, it might have been the first of its kind, and maybe they're saying he can do it later, and if he's not going to affect his life, then hey, that's how it works. But if all that being said, do you think that, your opinion, because again, you know this stuff, I don't know this stuff, I'm on the outside looking in, do you believe that this was appropriate? Do you think that they made the right decision based on their logic, or does it seem like a smokescreen or an easy way out?
Well, I think it seems like an easy way out, and I think that Chief Justice Roberts, very well known, does not like to inject the court into in the politics of the day, right? So, preserve the institution of the court and in the judiciary, and don't meddle in political questions. And I think Justice Barrett is that way as well. So I don't think it's a smokescreen. I think that they have true convictions, but I do think the reasons that it should have been dismissed is because, what I was talking about before, where you can't prosecute the president at any stage. Really, there's three reasons for it. One is, if you can't incarcerate the president, because how can they do their job if they're locked up? Well, Judge Merchan took that off the table, and that's why Judge Merchan said the only sentence that he could impose, that you played the soundbite before, was a unconditional discharge, because you can't impose any restrictions, even if it's not incarceration, It's not jailing him. You don't want to put any restrictions because you'll trigger that one category that says it's impermissible, which is the incarceration one. The second thing is it going to occupy your mind as the president, where you're going to have to be thinking about your defense all the time, and you're not going to be able to focus on the work of the presidency.
Right.
That doesn't as much happen at the appellate level as it does at the sort of the trial level, when you're trying to figure out how you're going to defend your case in front of a jury. There's a closed universe of evidence now. It goes in front of the appellate court, and the lawyers pretty much handle that. So I think Justice Roberts and Coney Barrett were on firm ground on both of those. The last one, though, is the stigma. Is there a stigma that comes with having a felony conviction or having a criminal prosecution and conviction? And this there unquestionably is. And the way that the Supreme Court sort of addressed it is, there's no real stigma, and this is the way Merchan addressed it. There's no stigma because, look, everybody in the public knew you had a verdict against you. He wasn't convicted technically, but he had a verdict against him, finding him guilty, and they still overwhelmingly voted him into office. So what kind of stigma could possibly attach to being
that
now
makes a lot of sense.
denominated?
I get that. I totally get that. The stigma is the part that, to me, that would stay in my head. Point number two. Amir, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I got to hit this break here, but I want to say, they carry us in Washington, D.C. live now, which is really fun. And if anybody's listening, I think Amir Benno would be fantastic part of the Trump legal team in D.C. I don't know if you could leave what you're doing, but you've got my vote, brother. Thank you.
You're a kind man to say so. It's always a pleasure to be on with you. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
You bet. God bless, man. Happy New Year. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Getting to your calls momentarily. Again, the number 833-482-5337. 833-4-5337. I always forget the number, by the way. Just a little trivia. 833-4-Valdez. And I mentioned earlier something that I wanted to share because I was criticizing Gavin Newsom for having the second largest city in America, probably the largest city in his state for sure, burning to a crisp. And I don't mean to be insensitive. I feel badly about that. But I feel even worse that these people, this is their leader. And this man is here crying to Joe Biden about we've got to make sure he wants the president to use the power of the government to silence misinformation. Like, it's wrong on every level. Shut up and do your job, sir. I like to think of, my brothers were cops. I volunteered with the police department in my town as a reserve cop for a little while, a couple of years. And I never went through anything like my brothers who served in the NYPD. But I can tell you, that's not an easy job. Right? It's a job where people give you a hard time. They insult you. Sometimes they assault you. And they do it. They do the job. This man is the governor. He's the epitome of public servants, right? The office, at least. And he's sitting here crying about people criticizing him. Misinformation? What do you care, sir? That's the game you signed up for. You're a politician. That's how that works. I mean, this is so thin-skinned, I'm trying to find a good word that won't get me in trouble. What a wuss this guy is. What a wuss. I can't think of a cleaner way to say that. But, man, really disappointing. Really disappointing. And to think the Democrats might have considered this guy. Let me tell you, they were better off with Kamala Harris. This guy, I don't trust him as far as I could throw him. But anyway, after all that, Governor Ron DeSantis was calling out the media. Now, I don't want to belabor this too much, but I've got a quick clip of Governor Ron DeSantis. He was at Mar-a-Lago yesterday, and he pretty much put the media in check, saying, look, you guys would be calling out Gavin Newsom if he were a Republican. But since he's not, you're not. Check this out.
Appropriate for the president-elect or a president to be criticizing. Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have him nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. And I know we've dealt with it. We just assume in Florida, anytime something happens, it's going to be politicized by the media. So you guys sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, I mean, excuse me, I think your track record of politicizing these things is very, very bad.
Yeah, I think he's spot on with that. I mean, 100% right. If this were a different way, they'd be doing it differently. And I'm glad he called him out. Good on Governor DeSantis. Anyway, your calls. We've got Jim in Lusby, Maryland. We're going to get to you momentarily. I have to take a pause right here. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It's open phones. Let's go to Jim, Lusby, Maryland, WMAL in the building. Go for it, Jim, quickly.
Yeah, Rich, real quick, thank you. Welcome to D.C., by the way.
Thank you, sir.
You are on the powerhouse station, WMAL. I've enjoyed listening to you on there when you substitute for some of our other hosts. But my question deals with the sentencing of Donald Trump. Canada
and him being a felon, right? Will he be allowed to go to Canada if they don't accept felons? You know, I don't know, but I'm guessing he'll figure out a way, right? I guess if you're the president, you could still pull things off. Jim, sorry to cut you off. The music means we got to go. I appreciate your kind words. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we are national, and I'm extremely happy to be here. I'm blessed to have the opportunity to be with you guys live in so many different parts of this country. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And, of course, here at America at Night with me, Rich Valdez, we talk about what's going on. I call some of my friends. You know, I was a talk radio producer for a long time and a local host in New York City. So over the years, you meet people, you know people, and I try to run this show where I kind of call on some of the people I've met and I know and get the inside scoop and have that conversation with you all together collectively, a late night national town hall conversation with America. And I want you to join us. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-Valdez. Now, a couple of headlines. Trump was sentenced in the notorious hush money case. No prison, no probation, no conditions. Judge Merchan held him to the guilty standard, did not drop the case. The Supreme Court also did not intervene, and this is the outcome. And we had a really robust conversation with Amir Benno in the first hour of the show. And that is something that I recommend. If you did not hear it, you should go to richvaldez.com and listen to the replay. It'll probably be up in about 2.5 hours or so. And I highly recommend that just because it was a great conversation. I did most of the listening. He knows a lot. He worked in that office under a different Manhattan district attorney, and he gave us the inside scoop. So anyway, that's that. Then there's controversy unfolding in Los Angeles amidst all the drama that's going on. You got Gavin Newsom going to the White House complaining to Joel Baboso Biden, saying things like, we've got to stop the information. It's hurricane force winds, the level of disinformation that's out there. I say the crap that comes flying out of his mouth is like hurricane force winds. That guy is a clown. He's a fake. He's a phony. He's a fraud, in the words of the immortal Bob Grant. And I really can't stand the guy. I'm happy to interview him and be respectful because maybe, you know, I don't want to judge a book by its cover. But from what I can see, he lacks much to be desired. Anyway, so Newsom says it's misinformation. Meanwhile, you've got real serious problems, right? There are serious problems that are going on. There's fire hydrants that didn't work. Then you've got the water people saying, well, you know, we couldn't get the water there in time because we didn't have water. They're blaming the governor for trying to protect the fish and closing down the dam. And now they're saying we didn't have electricity, so that's why we didn't get the water. The firemen are doing the best they can. I seen a video of firemen trying to put out water with women's pocketbooks filled with water, rushing over to a fire. I mean, these are heroes, and we're not helping them. Well, the woman in charge of that, she's one of the Kristins. And earlier I said they were called Christina. No, I'm wrong. It's Christine and two Kristins, all spelled with a K. And she said, she is the deputy fire chief in Los Angeles, that she was failed by the administration. So everybody's pointing fingers at each other. I'm going to get into that right after the bottom of the hour because I want you to hear some of that audio that we have. But I also like to dedicate a good portion of the show to taking your calls from all over the country, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast, all as far out as Alaska and Hawaii. In Hawaii, we're on in Hawaii, and it's like drive time over there. So aloha, everybody, on your way home from work. And I love doing that. And part of why I love talking to everybody all across the country is something that Larry King once said. He started this show a long time ago, and Jim Bohannon, the late, great Jim Bohannon, took the mantle from him for 3 decades. And in the last 46 years, this show has had 3 hosts, and I'm the third one. I mean, what an honor. And Larry King talked about the importance of Open Phone America and taking calls from listeners all over the place, and the impact that it had. And while Larry and I didn't have anything in common politically, I think we had this in common. Listen to this.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, you're kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Yeah, it is a conglomeration of America all in one room, in my headphones, in my studio. So I love that, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of our callers that are patiently waiting, and I really appreciate that. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Wayne. He's in Joplin, Missouri, KZRG. Wayne, go for it.
We've got 3 points. Number one, Mershon needs to be disbarred. What he did was kangaroo court. Number two, I just moved back up to the Midwest from Northwest Florida. Governor DeSantis was spot on, and we need more governors like him. He is awesome.
Yeah.
Number three, any state, local, or federal agency that has had anything to do with transportation or housing of the illegals coming up from the border needs to be charged with human trafficking and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Man, I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see it start with Joe Biden. But we have this whole presidential immunity. We have this whole qualified immunity for congressional members, for people that are serving in a public capacity, anybody that's working on behalf of the government or the public good. They get a pass. You can't really go after them because they say that this is what they're doing in the commission of their job. And Trump just actually won that court case in the Supreme Court. So I doubt we're going to get there. But listen, I'm with you. And I think the way that they need to address that is to say, look, moving forward, we realize this was a huge mistake. There's a lot of slave labor here. There's a lot of sex trafficking here. Kamala Harris, who I like to call Que Mala Eres, and Joel Baboso Biden have been running the largest human smuggling operation that we've ever seen in United States history, being paid for by the American taxpayer. They are transnational criminals, in my opinion, but I don't think they would be considered that in a court of law. And that's why I think we need to put them on notice and say, look, we're not doing that anymore. And moving forward, your immunity only goes but so far. And maybe there needs to be some limitations on that, because I think they're famous for saying nobody's above the law, but they want to put Trump in jail for 400 years or whatever they were suggesting originally on those 4 cases for a ledger entry, a misdemeanor, if that, which was passed over by multiple agencies. Yet you've got an actual transnational criminal enterprise, Alejandro Mayorkas, this woman, Que Mala Eres, Joe El Baboso Biden. These people are ruining lives, and bringing in murderers, people that are raping, that are killing. It's absolutely disgusting. It's a travesty what's going on, and they get a pass. And that is unfortunate. And this is why we have to do better, and we have to know what we're doing, because the way the system is set up now, it's rigged for them to continue doing what they're doing. I'm glad Trump's there. I'm looking forward and grateful for him rooting out the people in the swamp. But we need actual reform where people that, if you get the wrong person in that job, like we did this time, that we can do something about it, because clearly it didn't happen in the last 4 years. Wayne in Joplin, Missouri, KZRG in the building. Thank you for your call. Let me see. One more. Actually can't do, I'll do one more here. Robert, Charleston, South Carolina, very quickly. WTMA, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say when President Trump got elected, the stock market shot up because the stock market is a leading indicator. And so also is the job market to a degree. In the month of December, the number of new employees, new hires increased much more than they expected. That is consistent with what you would believe, because they knew that Donald Trump. They know that Donald Trump's going to be taking over on the 20th, so they're getting ready to expand product lines and also expand product offerings and also product lines. It's consistent, and Joe Biden immediately takes credit for it. Which is not logical. What's logical is what I described at first.
Yeah, I think you're right, brother. Joe El Baboso Biden is a disgraceful individual. I wish him the best. Sometimes he doesn't know if he's coming or going. He uses a lot of his political muscle memory to get by in things, flashing his pearly whites and squinting his eyes, putting on his aviator shades. But ultimately, we were in bad shape with him, and we've got 10 more days till the big day. Robert, South Carolina, WTMA in the building. Thanks for your call. Folks, we continue with your calls and more. Plus, we're checking in with the lobbyist who's in charge of Big Family, Terry Schilling. He's scheduled to be with us in a little bit. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, it's Rich Valdez. Happy to be here with you, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. And we're live and national this evening, this Friday night. And the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Open phones across America. The last two segments of the show. You guys get to weigh in on everything we're talking about, plus whatever you want to bring to the table. It's all good. Looking forward to chatting with you. And before we do that, I want to talk about, we just heard Gavin Newsom before complaining about misinformation. Now we've got Mark Zuckerberg. He's doing damage control. I guess he's no longer under the thumb of the Democrats because their power is dissipating in Washington. So he says, you know what? Now I can tell the truth, or at least change my story. But either way, it's a win for us. He says that he was under pressure, and he was on Joe Rogan's podcast saying a lot of stuff. Check this out.
It was during the Biden administration when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And I'm generally pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who was basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that. But you did it, Mark Zuckerberg. You sure did it. And finally, now he's saying he's going to do it a lot less, and he wants to be just like his big brother, Elon Musk, and he wants to use community notes, yada, yada, yada. Bust out the violins. This guy's a fake, phony, and fraud if I've ever seen one. But I'm willing to have the conversation with him, give him the benefit of the doubt, because I've never met him. I don't know him from a hole in the wall. But somebody I have met, somebody we've had on this show a number of times, he represents not big pharma, not big tobacco, but big family. Terry Schilling, he's president of the American Principles Project. He's out there doing the right thing for America, and he's with us now. Terry Schilling, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Rich, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for getting the tagline right. I mean, I think you do that better than I do most of the times when I'm doing these pitches, so thank you.
Thanks, brother. So I want you to weigh in on this because, Facebook, Meta, Instagram, whatever else they own, Mark Zuckerberg, he's now saying, look, we're not doing fact-checking anymore. And, voices like mine and so many others were out here for a long time banging the pots and pans saying, look, this fact-checking is nothing more than some sort of institutionalized propaganda to say that, no, don't believe your lying eyes. And here we are. So I'm happy that that's happening, right? I'm happy that people got their Facebook back. I don't know how long that lasts, maybe till the next Democrat administration. But what say you?
Look, I think this is amazing. It really is a totally different world that we're living in. And I say that not just because I had a bunch of kids and still do, and we went through COVID together and they kept masks on my kids in schools and made their lives hell. I say it because Facebook and the other big tech companies were also censoring socially conservative messages. And I'll give you an example that hits home with the big family in APP, and that is in 2020, we spent $8 million helping President Trump, and we were attacking Joe Biden and Gary Peters, who's a senator from Michigan. We were attacking them for wanting to put gender identity into civil rights law and to destroy girls' sports. Well, Facebook got fact-checked. They hired these fact-checking companies like PolitiFact, and that's run by this progressive communist woman named Angie Holland. And they shut our ads down. We had millions of dollars that we were trying to give to Facebook, and PolitiFact and communist editor and quote-unquote fact-checker Angie Holland shut our ads down and wouldn't even let us have a response on it. And it's not like the claims were erroneous. They said they were missing context. And really what they were missing was the Democrats' arguments, right? They wanted us to run Democrat arguments for them. But I look at this as a very good thing. I believe in, obviously always being skeptical, trust but verify. But I also believe in praising people when they do the right thing. And you know what? It's a new day. Mark Zuckerberg is coming out, and his moves right now are saying that this is what the tech titans and the American business class is seeing. They're seeing that this is an era of Donald Trump, and there's a new conservative resurgence, and we should ride this wave as long as we can.
I'm with that. Folks, again, we're on with Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project. And what do you think this means for, I guess, free speech as we move forward? Because I think it's a new bastion, right? There were a lot of people that I know. I'm on every social media platform that I, for the most part, because, I want to promote the program. I want to be able to reach the listeners of this show and communicate with them in the best manner that I can. So I'm on Truth Social and X or Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I got to tell you, the hardest part is Instagram and Facebook. It's so hard to reach people. It's so much easier on the other platforms. You don't get censorship. You don't get the constant red flag violations, where they put labels on you saying that you're spreading misinformation just because you're telling what Zuckerberg just called the truth. And I find it remarkable that we're here. I really do. I thought it was over for us. I thought we were headed for Big Brother and this dystopian lifestyle. And we're making America great again. So I'm happy about that. But what do you think all of this means for all of us?
Well, I think it's a returning power back to the American people, right? When Facebook and all the big tech companies and the legacy media, when they were doing the censorship and shutting people's accounts down and shadow banning them, what they were doing was they were taking power away from the American people to access information and access arguments that they might agree with or disagree with, right? And now what we're seeing is with Facebook now going the route of X and Twitter, where they have community notes, now they're empowering the American people. Now we can actually have these debates amongst ourselves. Rich, I mean, I've been involved in politics for quite some time. So have you. We all know that untrue things are going to get said here, but you have to trust the American people. You can't believe in democracy and the ability of people to choose the leader of the free world if you don't even believe that we're good enough at discerning what's true and what's not. Right? If you don't believe that we can discern what's true and good information and what's not, then why should we even be voting in the first place? Right? Isn't that quite a dangerous predicament that we're in?
It makes a lot of sense to me. Terry Schilling, stick with me. I want to come back and get your take on a couple of other items here with this Mark Zuckerberg stuff. Folks, we're coming right back with Terry Schilling. He's the head of the American Principles Project. He's our guest, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The worst single product out there is TikTok. I'm coming to see that TikTok has a devastating impact on on people's ability to pay attention. It's the most addictive. It sucks up time, and it's horrible. It's so effective that Meta copied it, with Instagram Reels, and YouTube copied it with YouTube Shorts. So the message for parents would be, I'd say the worst single thing for your kid is TikTok. I don't think anybody should be on TikTok, even adults, but certainly not kids going through puberty.
Now, that's the effect that TikTok is having, and they're facing a big case in the Supreme Court where the Supreme Court's going to decide whether TikTok poses a threat to national security. And they had oral arguments today. And I want you to listen to this quick exchange between Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Barrett, and Noel Francisco, one of the attorneys representing TikTok.
What happens after January 19th if you lose this case? Can you just spell that out?
At least as I understand it, we go dark. Essentially, the platform shuts down.
You keep saying shut down. The law doesn't say TikTok has to shut down. It says ByteDance has to divest. If ByteDance divested TikTok, we wouldn't be here, right?
So I want to bring this back to Terry Schilling. He's like a lobbyist for America. He represents the big family lobby, and he's the president of the American Principles Project. Terry Schilling, you just heard a little bit of that exchange. Give me your thoughts on what's going on with TikTok and where it's going to go.
Well, I think I agree with, I don't know who was describing the dangers that TikTok poses to our kids and how it's inappropriate, but I completely agree with them. And I agree in general about social media and children. We should be protecting our children from this. It does ruin their lives and it steals their childhood away from them. But I've seen this legislation. They passed it years ago, or maybe about a year and a half ago. I think it's right. I think that, there are a lot of privacy concerns and data concerns about what the CCP has been doing through the TikTok app. They collect keystrokes, they collect your consumer data, your browsing history. I mean, if you have that app on your phone, they have a lot of your information and probably much more than you're comfortable with. So these types of companies that are allowed to be on your phone and be as invasive as that, we really should at a bare minimum make sure that they're owned by Americans and not the Chinese communists that want to destroy our country and steal all your money.
And, Terry Schilling, what's interesting, and again, just as an aside here, even the American companies that own these apps, a lot of them come with factory presets when you download the app that you have to go and change, like keeping the mic on, right? I don't need the mic on for me to use Instagram, but they put it in as a feature in case you want to use the Instagram calling feature, right? So I know a lot of these apps automatically turn your mic on, and when you're in the app, they can hear you. And it's just a default setting that I think is a problematic setting when you're able to, they could see your GPS, they could see your camera, they could hear your voice. This is pretty compromising, I think, for a lot of people. And many of us don't even realize we're just signing this away every time we download any app, let alone a Chinese-run one like TikTok.
No, that's right. And it's a really poor reflection on the courage of lawmakers and their ability to rein this in with so many people running away from this. Now, thank goodness that they passed this law that forces TikTok, if they're going to operate here, to be owned by Americans, but it's far too late. I mean, think about TikTok exploded, I think, around 6 or 7 years ago. And if you think about all of the data that's passed through them that they've gotten to see, I mean, I would be willing to bet that a lot of this stuff compromises America's national security. I mean, how many government employees had the TikTok app installed on their phone? How many Department of Defense employees? How many FBI employees? And it doesn't matter. I'm sure that there are ways to do this, even with people that are connected on your network. I'm sure that there are tools. It's very bad, but we need to have these companies reined in and controlled by America. These are corporations, but that doesn't mean that we don't get to pass laws to protect us. Corporations are not supreme in America. The American people are, and we need our government to help secure our rights for us.
Yeah, good point. Now, I want to move on from that, and I want to switch to something more gossip-oriented, because President Trump was sitting next to President Obama at President Carter's funeral yesterday, and these guys looked like two peas in a pod, like they were the best of friends, and it broke the internet. It was all over the place, and Trump spoke about it today, saying, Yeah, it did look very friendly, I must say. Boy, they look like two people that like each other, and we probably do, is the quote that he shared. And I want to know, what do you think these guys were talking about?
I don't know. I mean, it could be anything. I do. Look, I'll tell you this, Rich. Donald Trump has always been a very charming and lovable guy, right? This is a guy that had one of the top performing and most, biggest audiences and best performing TV shows. He's won awards for it. People like him. I mean, Al Sharpton and the NAACP, they gave him awards. Like, this is a good guy. Everyone liked him until he announced he was a Republican. That really tells you how nasty some of these Democrats are, that they can't, once they find out he's a Republican and gets elected, now they don't want to be his friend. Like, that's nasty. I've got Democrat friends. I'm sure you do too. They're fewer ever since Donald Trump came on the scene, and they don't really want to hang out. But I think he's an infinitely likable guy. I think what I'm concerned about, though, Rich, is I think that what the Democrats' lesson is, and the establishment Republicans' lesson from all this is, they tried the hard way. They tried to beat the crap out of him. They tried to put him in jail and bankrupt him and ruin his reputation, and that all failed. So now I think they're going to try and kiss his tail and butter him up and try and win him over that way. And so I've just been recommending with my friends in Trump world, just be on guard, trust but verify, and don't let them flatter you too much, because they're still your enemy. They still hate you.
Yeah, I hear that. Now, we're 10 days away from Inauguration Day. How do you think this thing goes? A lot of people are talking about, there's going to be disruptions, there's going to be an attack, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. Lots of speculation, lots of innuendo. I tend to feel positive about it. What's your take?
I think that because Donald Trump won the popular vote, there's really not a lot of patience for the same type of attacks we saw from Antifa in 2016 after that election for the inauguration in January 2017. I just don't think they have as much ire. They can't argue that he didn't get more votes than Kamala. They can't argue that he didn't win, because he did. And the American people are behind him. And so if they can try and do all this stuff, but it's going to really hurt the Democratic Party. And you think about all the dysfunction Democrats have right now in California. I mean, my goodness, their work is cut out for them. They're eating themselves alive out there. They're all turning on each other. And so I think it'll be a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th.
Yeah, and with California, I mean, Gavin Newsom says it's all misinformation. That's really the problem there, not his ineptitude. Terry Schilling, I want you to let everybody here know how they can support the cause, how they can keep in touch with you and learn more about what you do at APP.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Rich. And I really do like to get out and meet lots of people. We've seen each other quite a bit. But I'm constantly writing and exposing things online. On Twitter, that's where I'm most active. But my handle across all accounts online is Schilling1776, SCHILLING 1776. And if anyone wants to find out more about American Principles Project, they can go to AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. And you can see our campaign ads that we ran for President Trump and even make a donation if you feel called to it. But we've got so much money that goes to all these other special interest groups. The American family is the most important institution. I really do believe that. And because of that, we need a powerful fighting force just like the NRA has for gun owners.
Outstanding. Well, Terry Schilling, I want to thank you for being here, brother. Keep up the great work. Godspeed to you. And maybe I'll bump into you during Inauguration Week. We'll see.
Sounds good, Rich.
You got it, brother. Thanks again. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and so much more. 833-482-5337. Plus, I owe you that audio of the fire chief saying, yeah, the mayor failed me. And I think when she says the mayor, she means everybody from the mayor up, including Gavin Newsom. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
shows like yours that are breaking through, that people are listening to, that people are trusting.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Did the city of Los Angeles fail you and your department and our city?
It's my job to stand up as a chief and exactly say, justifiably, what the fire department needs to operate to meet the demands of the community.
Did they fail you?
That is our job, and I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
That is remarkable, right? I don't know if that is her being a stand-up person. I don't know if that is her reluctantly throwing people under the bus, doing the right thing on behalf of we the people. Seemed like that to me. I think everybody here is ultimately going, you know what, look, and this is what I've been saying, right? These firefighters are out there. They're fighting fires. This woman was a firefighter for 20 years, right? You know, I'm beating her up because she's not doing a great job right now. But you've got to beat people up. This is how you hold people accountable. That's what accountability is. And when you put her under pressure, she says, well, they have failed us. I don't think she's scapegoating here. I think she's right. Because you know what? Nobody can say that the firefighters are not out there fighting the fires. She's saying we pull up to the pump and there's no water. If there's no water in your hydrant, how are you going to fight the fire? Right? This is a big deal. Anyway, that's, again, Los Angeles Fire Department Deputy Chief Christine, I think that's her name, Christine Larson, or is the other one? Crowley, excuse me, Kristen Crowley. And she told it like it was. And I'm glad she did. The other one that I just mentioned, Larson, she's the one that said, I have to carry you out of a burning building. Yeah, let's play that again. Listen to this.
Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
That one is Christine Larson. And she's facing a lot of criticism online because of these comments that she made about, you know, victims of fires and whatnot. And she was speaking as part of a video that aired during a commercial break for a TV show on Fox called 911. It's about firefighter capabilities. And again, you know, you just heard her say it. Am I able to carry your husband out of a fire? He got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out. Bad thing to say, right? Her remarks were captured in a resurfaced clip that's making its way all around the place. Shout out to our friends at End Wokeness on Twitter who put it out there. And this is a big deal, right? She's not saying what the other Kristen said. She's not. The other one is out there fighting fires. She's the head of operations as the assistant chief. And, you know, I'm not here to defend her. I'm just here to call it like it is. This lady's out here saying, if I got to carry out a fire, you know, you get yourself into a jam. That's just not how you talk. Anyway, I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this because I think this is absolute insanity, what's going on. You got Gavin Newsom saying it's misinformation. These people are here taking all sorts of the 3 different Kristens, or the 2 Kristens and a Christine, all with a K, by the way, and all proudly celebrating LGBTQ, which I don't think factors into this, but it becomes interesting when it does factor in, right? And the reason it does is because they cut the budget, which I've never met a politician that likes to cut budgets. I can't believe you got a Democrat to cut a budget, but they did. They cut the budget to redirect funds to DEI stuff, to painting LGBTQ fire hydrants and things of that nature. That stuff is what destroyed this great town, or once great town, right? The fact that they couldn't do their jobs because of their wokeness. And hopefully somebody sees that this is like a full circle thing, right? It's very circuitous. This is a thing. You plant those seeds of wokeness, this is what grows. Armageddon. It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, I want to get some of your thoughts on what's going on with Judge Merchan, El Trompito, the wildfire, the poor response to the wildfire, TikTok potentially getting banned, and so much more. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to John calling us from San Diego, California. I want to give a shout out to all of our affiliates in California, and he's streaming the show tonight, richvaldez.com. John, go for it. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, I think we need to try and get Coney Barrett impeached for misrepresenting herself, because all the Democrat judges, they do exactly what the Democrats want, but our judges end up being a piece of garbage, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call her a piece of garbage, but I get what you're saying. There's a lot of disappointment with Barrett and with Chief Justice Roberts. And I think ultimately what happens here is this is really the reason that I identify as a conservative and have voted for Republicans, because of the big tent, because of that. I don't want us all to think the same all the time. Now, it would have been nice if there would have been some agreement on this particular case, but I'm not going to begrudge them too much, because that's the game I'm in. I'm in the game of differing opinions. And I think, you know what, just make a good defense for yourself. They gave their defense. I read the dissent, and I didn't really buy it. I spent an hour talking about it with somebody from what is today Alvin Bragg's office, the New York County District Attorney's office. He explained that he thinks they did the wrong thing too. So I get it. Ultimately, I guess it comes down to she thinks this isn't the court's job to intervene. It could potentially be viewed like the court putting their thumb on the scales. I don't know that I agree with that, but I will give the benefit of the doubt, saying, all right, if that's what you think. But I'm not totally sold. So with you, I share some disappointment with Justice Barrett and, of course, with Justice Roberts. I pretty much am perpetually disappointed in Justice Roberts, even if he does makes a call that I agree with. I would be like, all right, even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I'm not a fan, right? Am I a fan of Clarence Thomas? You betcha, in the words of Sarah Palin. Am I a fan of Sam Alito? You betcha. Those are solid justices. And Antonin Scalia, God rest his soul, another one. Fantastic. Wish we had more like those guys. But we got to do what we got to do. And in the words of, what's his name? Rumsfeld. Can't go to war with the army you want. You got to go to war with the army you have. And there we are. Unconditional discharge. John in San Diego, thank you, sir. I'm going to take a pause right here. We're coming right back. Your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you so much for having me back on, Rich. I always enjoy talking to you.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, with less than a minute to go on the clock, we go to Boise, Idaho to check in with one of our faves, Paul, KBOI, in the building. Go for it.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. Yeah,
yes, sir.
Proof that there was a miscarriage of jurisprudence in the courtroom with Marshawn wearing the black robe. And when he got up from his chair, his robe got caught on a nail or something and lifted it up a little bit, and there was a pouch. And inside the pouch was a little kangaroo. Just for
the kangaroo court, right? Judge Mershon is given the black robe, a black eye. Paul in Boise, Idaho, thank you for your call, my brother. Folks, open phones across America coming up straight ahead, the third hour, the final hour, the coveted hour of this program. But if you're not coming back, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And what a discussion on the fate of Donald Trump today. Unconditional discharge. We're going to speak with Amir Benno at the, well, if you heard that already, you heard it. If you didn't, it's coming up, and it's going to be great. It's a really good conversation on what happened. He used to work in the New York City, New York County Prosecutor's Office, as an assistant district attorney, and really eye-opening stuff. Of course, things in California, still crazy. There's still a whole lot of crazy going on in California. Even Joe Scarborough is weighing in on the failures that have been evident, right? You got Gavin Newsom saying, well, you know, we diverted the dam because of the little fish. Then the water person yesterday, we played that audio of them saying, well, you know, we don't have water pressure in the hydrants because we can't get water into the reservoirs and blah, blah, blah. Now, somebody else today was saying that there wasn't enough power, like electricity, because the electricity went out to get the water into the things. One reservoir that had 117 million gallons of water was empty as a result of these failures. And then you have insurance companies that were bailing out on fire insurance as far back as 4 months ago. I mean, forgive me for putting on my tinfoil hat and saying this is a perfect storm for an absolute disaster. It almost sounds planned. Right? It's kind of like saying, my gosh, things went so bad at the southern border. Can you believe it? Yeah, I believe it. They did it on purpose. Now, the same way I believe that, it's starting to be the same way I'm looking at this. How do you screw things up so badly? These are human beings in their homes. You're not protecting life. You're not protecting property. You're not doing your job. You're protecting a fish over a human. I mean, this is insanity. You got firefighters out there, brave, courageous men. Shout out to them, by the way. Shout out to everybody in law enforcement. It's Law Enforcement Week this week, by the way. Big shout out to them. These brave firemen that are out there putting water in women's handbags that can hold a gallon of water and taking it from their truck to a fire. I saw that yesterday on the social media. Somebody was filming their own TV because they saw it on the news and they couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it either. And I thought, man, I hope this is a deep fake. And then a little while after that, what do I hear? I hear this woman, Janice Quinones. She's the head of the water department. I played this a couple of times yesterday. I'm going to play a little bit for you again here because she comes out and says, yeah, it's true. We ran out of water. Listen to this.
We ran out of water in the first tank at about 4:45 p.m. yesterday. We ran out of water on the second tank about 8:30 p.m. and the third tank about 3 a.m. this morning. Those tanks help with the pressure on the fire hydrants and the hills of Palisades. And because we were pushing so much water in our trunk line, and so much water was being used before it can get to the tanks, we were not able to fill the tanks fast enough. So the consumption of water was faster than we can provide water in our trunk line. So I want to make sure that you understand there's water on the trunk line. It just cannot get up the hill because we cannot fill the tanks fast enough.
This is crazy. I mean, absolute craziness. Now, look, this is not me saying she's wrong, Newsom's wrong. I'm saying there's wrong here for everybody to take a piece. But it's not just them being wrong. I mean, I understand there's a piece of this that I don't want to sound like I'm overlooking, which is they've never seen a fire like this. But I have to agree to the pushback when they say, or if I say, we've never seen a fire like this, they're going to say, of course, because we didn't have water to put it out. had we had enough water to put it out. Trump is going to say, if you didn't try and save the fish, if you would have cleaned up your dead trees and did good forest management, right? It's like at every level, they made a bad move, to the point where you've got the fire chief today saying that, admitting that she was failed by her superiors. This is the Kristen Cowley, the fire chief in Los Angeles. Listen to this one.
Did the city of Los Angeles fail you and your department and our city?
It's my job to stand up as a chief and exactly say, justifiably, what the fire department needs to operate to meet the demands of the community.
Did they fail you?
That is our job, and I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
Yes, they did. And while she admits it, Gavin Newsom goes on some Zoom call with Joe El Baboso Biden, and he says, no. This is misinformation, and this is what we've got to focus on. This man's a disgrace. Trump was right to call on his resignation, and I think he should be the next Governor Brown that gets recalled. This guy's horrible. They should force him to quit. He should be tarred and feathered, in a figurative sense, right? Unbelievable. So anyway, while he's denying it, you know who's admitting it? The morning joke. Joe Scarborough coming clean, saying, look, I don't know why there's failures, but listen to this.
We don't know the exact causes for the complete failure of government to be able to protect these homes. I don't think we can say it's the smelt alone. We don't know what it is.
Excuse me, Mr. Smelt, let me explain to you the exact reason for the complete failure of government. Are you ready? Take notes, Joe. It's all your friends at MSNBC. It's the brainwashing that's gone on in this country into people's minds, where they think that we're supposed to care more about who's gay, who they sleep with, why they should be sleeping with with the same sex instead of the opposite sex, why they should be cutting from budgets that matter to invest money in things that truly don't matter when it comes to life and death. It's your friends in the Democrat Party, sir. That's the reason. They can't sit here and point at all the Republicans that ruined their system of government. They can't sit here and point at all the conservatives that aren't doing their jobs. By and large, most cops, firefighters, these people are very conservative. For the most part. Most of the ones you meet, they're on board with the program. Working, they're trying to get a paycheck and a pension. And they do their job. Protecting people. From fire, from crime. Who's not? I'll tell you who's not. Gavin Newsom. I'll tell you who's not. Karen Bass. These people are the ones. These people are the reason. And these people all happen to be part of the same club. Progressive, left-wing, lunatic Democrats. Go ahead, play the tape.
But I do think it's going to be like Hurricane Katrina. I mean, the infrastructure has been slashed. You can't just say it's Karen Bass. You can't just say it's Gavin Newsom. This has been a trend for 30 years. Yeah. Infrastructure has been slashed across America. And you do have climate change, so you have wildfires sweeping into urban areas. They're kind of like fighting the last war.
Bull. I'm not buying it. This term wildfire, I'm just not buying it. I get it. It's hot. You got all this dry stuff. I've been to California. When you're landing, you could see it from far away. It's very brown. Very brown. A lot of brown grass. A lot of dead-looking palm trees that are super tall, taller than the ones in Miami. It was all right, you know. I did not fall in love with Los Angeles. I did like Hollywood Boulevard. It was cool because it was, very Hollywoodish, but very grimy. Reminded me of Times Square when it was very dirty. And yeah, he's right. There's been a state of decay for a long time, primarily on Gavin Newsom's watch. Right? I mean, let's just call a spade here. You can blame a lot of these people. Not Karen Bass. She's been there for 5 minutes. What about Antonio Villaraigosa? He was equally as bad. He allowed the infrastructure to crumble and did nothing. You want to sit there and point the fingers at the Republican mayor? The one they never had? Maybe you could point. And again, this is not some sort of partisan defense of Republicans. It's just my point that there's a trend amongst the Democrats. You should be policing your own instead of having, Republicans and conservatives beat you up in the media. You should be beating them up in the media. Hold them accountable. Police your own. Anyway, I want to talk about some stuff that's just out of this world coming up. Literally, like NASA. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Space is a big deal, right? There's a Space Force that President Trump created, and I want to talk about that. We got 2 upcoming launches coming up this month on the 19th or the 16th, I believe, of January, and then again on the 23rd. And there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on out of Mission Control, Houston. So I want to tell you a quick story. Why? Well, because I did something a lot of you never have. And I know this because most people haven't done it. I used to work for Governor Chris Christie and once attended the New Jersey Hall of Fame ceremony many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And in the green room, I met a bunch of really cool people that were nominated or, part of the who's who in the New Jersey Hall of Fame. Michael Douglas, the actor, Mary Higgins Clark, the writer. But amongst them was somebody that had roots in New Jersey, a guy named Dr. Buzz Aldrin, right? You know him as the second guy to walk on the moon. And we had such a good time. I talked to him for about a half hour, and we shared some stories. I mainly listened to a lot of his very entertaining stories about being the first guy to urinate on the moon, the first guy to take communion on the moon, and really just an amazing story, really cool guy. And tonight I have the pleasure of introducing you to another astronaut, Dr. Charles Camarda. He's an astronaut, a research engineer, inventor, an author, an educator, an internationally recognized expert on thermal protection systems, which I need right about now. I need to protect all the thermal I can because it is cold on the East Coast. And I don't mean to trivialize that. I just don't know what that is. And Dr. Charles Camarda retired from NASA in May of 2019 after 45 years of continuous service as a research engineer and a technical manager at Langley Research Center. It means he was neighbors with the spies over there. And he's done quite a lot in his career. He's the recipient of the NASA Space Flight Medal for his exceptional service. I mean, just quite a lot. If I gave you all the accolades, we'd be here and we'd have no time to actually talk to him. Dr. Camarda, welcome, sir.
How do you do, Rich? Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And again, I want to let everybody know you're the author of the book, Mission Out of Control. What a clever title. And there's so much I want to talk to you about, but I want to make sure, we touch all the points that you want to touch on in the time that we have together. So we've got about 4 or 5 minutes. So let's, at least in this part of the show. So let's start off with what's the big takeaway with Mission Out of Control?
Mission Out of Control, Rich, is a story of how even amazing organizations like NASA could lose their way and become very toxic, and it results in recurring disasters like Challenger, like Columbia. And we see this happen not only at places like NASA, but also great organizations like Boeing. And so the first half of the book really talks about how did NASA go down this path and lose its way from this
amazing research culture that it had pre-Apollo and right at the beginning of the Apollo program. And then over the next 40, 50 years, it gradually lost that expertise, that research culture, which is really, the research culture embodies a hierarchy of knowledge, right? A knowledge hierarchy where people are committed to learning, to doing research, learning, to having an open and vigorous exchange of ideas in a very psychologically safe environment. And that's how I was raised back when I was a researcher. And we slowly lost that gradually over time to the point when we started running large programs like Apollo and then Space Shuttle. We ran them as if they were businesses, and we developed a production culture driven by schedule and budget. And when we saw anomalies, we did not have the expertise, the right people to understand what those issues were, and it caused accidents.
Now, what do you attribute the main cause of losing our way in NASA to?
Well, it's a couple of things. You know, as the program grew, NASA could no longer do everything in-house, and so we had to oversee what dozens of aerospace contractors were doing, but we weren't able to bring that technology in-house and understand it and conduct research on it and test the failure like we normally do. And so what happened was we became less and less good engineers, and we started becoming what I call sustaining engineers. We were basically looking over the shoulder of people in industry doing the work, developing the hardware without really understanding it and looking at it and analyzing it in different ways. Okay. And so even though when we had, for instance, when we had the Columbia accident, the people that made that decision were using analysis that was totally wrong. It was incorrect. It was inaccurate, and really knowledgeable people would never have used that analysis. But yet the people that had the expertise were at the research centers, Langley, Glenn, and Ames Research Center. We still had good researchers there, but the people running the program at Johnson Space Flight Center, Marshall Space Flight Center, never did reach out and get those people on board when they saw these anomalies. And so after the accident, I was training in Russia when the accident happened. I came back and was able to form these teams and solve these problems that NASA was struggling with for over 30 years by bringing the right people on board.
Dr. Camarda, I'm going to put you on pause right there just because we got to hit a break, and we're going to come right back. We'll have a minute or two to finish up on the other side. Folks, we're coming right back with Dr. Charles J. Camarda. He is an astronaut, retired from NASA, and he's terrific. He's the author of the book, Mission Out of Control, and he's coming right back with us, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
We need to celebrate this moment in human history, because Artemis 2 is more than a mission to the moon and back. It's more than a mission that has to happen before we send people to the surface of the moon. It is the next step on the journey that gets humanity to Mars.
When we hear those words, we have touchdown. It's our next step to understanding how the moon formed.
And you're listening to a promotional video from NASA, and they do a whole lot of interesting things. We're on with a former NASA astronaut, Dr. Charles Camarda. He's the author of the book Mission Out of Control, and he is our guest. He was explaining to us prior to the break why NASA has gone astray. And he's also involved with the Epic Education Foundation. I want to learn about that and the main premise of the book before we wrap up our time. Dr. Camarda, the floor is yours.
Sure thing. So like we were talking about, the first half of the book talks about how organizations like NASA lose their way culturally. They lose their core ideology. And the second half of the book talks about how do you fix the problem? How do you create a network, a research network of high-performing teams that could rapidly address anomalies when they happen, solve them before they become major issues and catastrophes? Unfortunately, NASA is still suffering. That's why the Artemis program is suffering right now. And so I'm really hopeful that maybe this next administrator, we are able to change the culture there.
Yeah, I agree. Now, tell us about epiceducationfoundation.org.
Sure. Well, I started a nonprofit for education because after the Columbia accident, I realized that engineers at NASA were not solving problems correctly and creatively. So I created the Epic Education Foundation. We teach high school students, university students, and young NASA engineers how to solve very complex problems, and we address them. We look for challenges that are almost impossible to solve, and we teach them how to use creativity, how to form teams, how to rapidly create knowledge and that they need to solve the problems. And those are the same principles I discuss in my book, in the second half of my book, on how we created these teams and solved these problems to get us back up and flying and fly safely.
Dr. Camarda, people who want to get a copy of your book, Mission Out of Control, where do they go? How do they get it?
You can go to Amazon or you can go to missionoutofcontrolbook.com if you want an autographed copy. So either of those two places.
Missionoutofcontrolbook.com. Get the autographed copy. Everybody loves one of those. Or go to Amazon or wherever books are sold. The book is Mission Out of Control. Our guest, Dr. Charles J. Camarda, just internationally recognized expert on thermal protection systems, astronaut for NASA. It's not every day you get to talk to an astronaut, so that was pretty cool. I want to thank you for being here, sir. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, and enjoy the rest of the new year.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you. Hope to talk to you again soon. And amigos, we will continue, right? We are going to go to Daytona Beach, Florida. Check in with Lester, who's listening on WNDB. I think I got that right. And Lester, what's on your mind?
Yes. I wanted to say that I believe that Judge Juan Marchand is the third assassin. His mission was to put Donald Trump in a dungeon and keep him there until he was dead.
So accessory to murder is what you're alleging.
Trial, but it's not a simple trial. He had a mission. He was the third assassin.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, I don't think we could prove that, but I get where you're going with it, and I get it. I think ultimately so many people that were involved in the lawfare against President Trump, so many people that were involved in the manipulation of, what's that guy's name? I'm forgetting his name right now. The attorney for Clinton that spearheaded these things. I'm drawing a blank. But these people, they there's like a special place in a certain place for them, right? I don't want to get too deep here, but these people are just atrocious. They really are. They're horrible people that rigged an entire system, multiple systems, bringing lawsuits to change laws unlawfully, and just so much from the 2020 election to these 4 cases to the lawfare. So much of what's going on. I mean, things we've never seen before at a level we've never seen them. And kudos to El Trompito for, keeping God where he had to keep him, and God sparing his life so that he could be here to show them all up, honestly. God won't be mocked. And I'm really happy that he came out on the winning side, and that, he lives to tell the story, and he's going to take the oath of office in 10 short days. I can't wait. Lester in Daytona Beach, Florida. Thanks for tuning in, brother. Shout out to WNDB. Hope I got those call letters right. We have a lot of new ones, so forgive me if I misplaced any of those letters. But welcome to the family, our late night national town hall conversation. We are live, so if you want to call, this is your shot. Not going to be doing too many calls in the next hour because we've got a replay of our interview with Amir Benno. Now, Amir Benno was the assistant district attorney in the New York City prosecutor's office. That's the same office that Alvin Bragg is in today. He was there years earlier, but he's going to break down all his thoughts on this sentencing of President Trump with basically no outcome, but yet he's still a convicted felon. How about that? Anyway, I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back to your calls in Delaware, in Canada, New York, California, so much more. I appreciate all the calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You have given us the voice of hope. You give us hope, and we thank you so much for that. You make things seem brighter.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, busy news day, amigos. Lots to discuss. It's Rich Valdez, your liberty-loving Latino amigo, and I'm happy to be here with you. We're live. We're national. The phone number is 833-482-5337. Taking calls for the next, 18, 17 minutes. This is it for the week because after this, we're going to probably spend most of our time talking about the Trump case. Let's go to Linda, Newark, Delaware, WDEL. Linda, go for it. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi. Hey, before I ask my question that I called in for, just a quick question. Are you going to the inauguration?
I will be in D.C.
Because the Northern Delaware Republicans are chartering a bus to go down there.
Oh, how cool.
And, yeah, and I want to go, but, after thinking about what happened to some people on January 6th that weren't doing anything other than being there to hear Trump speak. I mean, they didn't do anything wrong, and look at the mess they got in. So
I'll tell you this, Linda, and I'm not giving you advice one way or the other, but I'll tell you this. I told my brother, one of my older brothers, I'm the youngest of a bunch, and I told one of them today, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to D.C. I'll be there for about 4 nights, 5 days. And he got very worried. He's like, "Oh, make sure you do this. Make sure you don't go too near this. Don't go near that. Things might go down. Make sure you know where the exits are. Even if you're outside, make sure you can get away." I mean, he was very concerned. I've been to an inauguration in the past. I was at the inauguration of President Bush, and I can tell you, back in 2005, it was a beautiful thing. It was very, very, very cold. It was similar if you've ever celebrated New Year's Eve in New York City, in Times Square. It's kind of like you get put into like a pen and you really can't leave. And I'm only going to presume that security is going to be even tighter this time around. So if you do make your way, maybe I'll get to meet you. I'll be broadcasting from WMAL in Washington, D.C. those days that I'm on the air there. And I'm looking forward to it. Now, all that being said, tell me what's on your mind, Linda.
So I've been listening to Amir Benton, was it?
Benno, B-E-N-N-O, yes.
Right. And I just have a question, because obviously being a convicted felon, whether you have any jail time or all, you can't do some really basic things like vote.
Vote, buy a gun, yeah.
Shame for our president to not be able to vote. But my question is,
right?
Once he's in office, can he not pardon himself?
So the answer to that is interesting. There's a lot of debate as to whether the president can pardon himself. I'm going to contend that he likely could, and it would be very difficult for them to say he couldn't. However, presidential pardon powers are only limited to federal crimes. And this, even though it was a federal crime used as the predicate offense, it was ultimately 34 counts of a state crime that they elevated to a felony status just for him outside of the statute of limitations. So the answer to that is no, because he can't pardon himself on a state crime. And that's where it gets tricky. And, Trump is all about, creating precedent and breaking tradition. If he could, it would be wonderful if he could do it on the way in. But most presidents do their pardoning on the way out. In this case, he wouldn't be able to because it's not. And that's why the federal cases were dropped, because he could, in effect, turn around with the Jack Smith stuff and do that. But luckily, the Supreme Court weighed in on a lot of that stuff and the other federal courts, and they kind of set the record straight there.
But I thought from what Amir was saying earlier, the reason this is a felony is because it was based on a federal.
They used a federal statute in the New York court, but it's not it's a federal, how should I say? It's a federal statute that they used as the predicate for the crime. But ultimately, the 34 charges were falsifying business documents in the state of New York, in particular, being charged in New York County or Manhattan. So he wouldn't be able to do it. It was very tricky. I mean, this is what also, if you're paying attention to what he said, and it's tough to follow this. This is something that's never been done. We've never seen local prosecutors take an alleged or supposed federal offense and use that as the predicate crime to then prosecute at the state level on state offenses that they therefore elevated to a felony. All outside of the statute of limitations, when every agency that had the right to prosecute at the federal level decided to pass, including his own agency. And he didn't do it until he was pressured to do so politically. The whole thing was out of control. Linda, very, very good question. Thank you. It was lovely speaking with you. Shout out to everybody listening on WDEL. That's Joe Biden country. I don't know if Joe Biden's your neighbor or not, Linda, but if he is, give him a wink and a nod and tell him, glad you're gone. Folks, we're coming right back. Rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, but I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What were you talking to Barack Obama about?
It did look very friendly, I must say. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it, how friendly it looked. I saw it on your wonderful network just a little while ago before I came in, and I said, boy, they look like two people that like each other, and we probably do. We have little different philosophies, right? But we probably do. I don't know, we just got along. But I got along with just about everybody on that. We met backstage, as you know, before we went on, and I thought it was a beautiful service, but we all got along very well, which is good.
They all got along really well. El Trumpito and Barack Obama. I want to know, what do you think they were talking about? And listen, I had a whole thing tonight that I wanted to get into. I'm not going to be able to get into it now, but promise you I will do it on Monday. So get ready for this. I'm going to tease it right now because we just don't have the time for it. But there is a tribe in Vietnam that in order to get married, you're forced to amputate your hands, not the women, the men. You amputate your hands like just above the wrist. Absolute insanity, in my opinion, but I want to know what you think about that, but not tonight. Just putting it out there. Right now, I want to know, what do you think El Trompito and Barack Hussein Obama were talking about? Let's hit the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Ziggy. Ziggy is in Marseilles, Illinois. WLS in the building. Go for it.
Right on, brother. I've been trying to get hold of you for months, okay?
Well, thank you, sir.
Show. I love what you think. And I think Trump, I voted. I'm 66 years old. For the first time in my life, I voted, and I voted for Trump. I think Trump is going to save our country. I think Barack Obama, and you might want to beat this out.
No, don't say it.
Is a piece of
a POS, piece of work. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with you, but I want to know, Ziggy, before we run out of time, what do you think Obama and Trump were talking about at Carter's funeral? They were just laughing it up.
No, I think Trump was trying to feel him out a little bit more. I think Obama was trying to lay some bullcrap on him. And Trump's a very smart man. He's my hero.
He's a brilliant man. Brilliant. Here, let me just share a thought with you. I have two ideas. One of them is I read in the New York Post, and the writer in the New York Post said that Trump was probably making a joke about Sleepy Joe, and that made Obama chuckle. And, of course, there's a clip of Kamala looking back as Obama's laughing, like, what's he laughing at? And then she sees Trump there, and she puts this face on, very, disgusted face. I like to think in my own fantasy land that he turns to him and he says something like, there's this guy on the radio very late at night, Rich Valdez, and he makes fun of him. He calls him Joe El Baboso Biden, and he calls her Que Mala Eres. And I think that's what makes Obama laugh. And then she gets mad and makes the face when she hears her name. I don't know. The jury's still out on that one. Brother, thank you for the call, Ziggy. I appreciate it. Let's go to Jefferson City, Missouri, KLIK, and check in with our resident historian, Bill. We're short on time, so make it quick. Go for it, sir.
Yes, Jimmy Carter's funeral. I saw some lukewarm performances from President Biden and Kamala, but I also found something really good from the Naval Academy performance by the men and women singing a cappella in the rotunda, and I thought they deserved a round of applause from your audience.
Well, let me be the first one to give them a round of applause. Always a big shout out to all of the men and women in uniform, those that have served in uniform. My brother Bobby, United States Marine Corps, Robert Valdez, I salute him and his memory. It's been a little over a year now that we haven't had him, and I miss him a lot. And a big salute to everybody in law enforcement. Of course, it's National Law Enforcement Week this week, and those firefighters everywhere, including in L.A. Keep doing what you're doing. Heroes, all of you. Even the ones I'm making a little fun of because they're all named Kristen. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. Keep it locked right here for more great programming. I'm Rich Valdez.